The visual arts has always existed between a progressive and conservative world. And when you think about the arts initially, one might be quick to assume that the progressive side of things is more so the champion of the arts. After all, a majority of the liberal arts, a majority of an embrace of all kinds of arts, normally comes from the sector that's progressive. When you think of conservatism in visual art, you think of a more limiting factor. You think of a more pragmatic and practical approach towards art. And a lot of times, conservative visions of art tend to be very basic in their understanding of the arts. So it seems like it would be clear cut as to who's the true champion of the arts. And as we move forward in a Trumpian country, you know, we look, we look at the arts and we're like, oh my God, this is dreadful. There's going to be um, arts funding that's going to be cut. There's going to be all these horrible things that happen. But what if I told you that there have always been terrible things happening and the possible end of art didn't start from a conservative force? The conservatives have always been, they've always looked at art um, through a vision that didn't necessarily push the envelope of what art could be. I know several conservative people that are art collectors, and that's not to say that if one is conservative, they can't embrace all forms of art. But in the world of the conservative, they ask a very of the conservative minded person. They ask a question: does this constitute art? They're not necessarily looking to label everything as art. They're looking to see if it hits checkpoints. Um, And I think about guys like, God, I can't remember his name. He had that Matt Walsh, and I had a rebuttal to Matt Walsh when he was saying this isn't art, talking about different works such as pieces by Basquiat, and again, that's that understanding of art that's pretty rudimentary, um, and because of that, if somebody like Matt Walsh was in charge of the direction of visual art, it would continue to look like the Renaissance. Now, is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Um, it's just a thing. If art never left realism, we would still be getting works that perhaps future artists rival Da Vinci and Michelangelo, but we wouldn't have groundbreaking artists that explore different ideas such as cubism, invented by Picasso and to a lesser degree, Baroque. Baroque? I think it was Baroque, George Baroque. I might be wrong. It's all relevant. Now, the controversial statement that I made that the downfall of art might have started with the progressives is eye opening. And I'm sure that I would immediately catch flack upon hearing that very statement, but I want you to listen. The problem with a progressive idea of art has been that there is no cap on what constitutes art, what constitutes quality. It is a wild free for all. And when you say everything is great and everything is subjective, there's no rules to the game, then what ends up happening is that art ends up getting co-opted by people that aren't artists. Because the very nature of what art is subjective. And if all things in art are subjective, then there's no rule as to who is and who is not an artist. And that completely negates being an artist as a profession. It's simply a condition, a way of just being. And it's hard to justify having a degree of occupational respect for something that isn't really a job. And by the nature of it becoming so subjective, we've made art into a parody. It's almost an ongoing joke. Um, you tape a banana to the wall and it's supposed to have the same effect as Marcel Duchamp, and it doesn't. We are adopting ideas over skill. And, it could be argued that the imagination was the skill in creating a conceptual piece. That very well may be. But when you don't have parameters of quality, you don't have parameters of visual aesthetics, then what do you have? I literally could fart and proclaim it art. I recall a person selling bags of air as art, and it was commentary on I can't remember what it was commentary on, but it was something ridiculous. And again, by me saying that something is ridiculous, I'm now in danger of becoming viewed as a conservative minded person when it comes to art. There's absolute freedom, which I think we all like the idea of, and then there's anarchy. The problem is the anarchist wants the same outcome that the controlled, more conservative minded person wants. If you use different methods to produce an outcome and you desire the same outcome as somebody who uses a method that's opposite of you, then you're in for disappointment. And this is a lot of what has the arts in a tailspin. The question is asked, why doesn't anybody take art seriously anymore? Well, is it something to take serious if anyone can do it? Is it really a profession if there's um, no need for the professional development part of it? If you don't have to learn, you don't have to work, you don't have to understand, is it really worthy of respect? On the other hand, if you decide what art is and other forms of expression don't meet that criteria, then your creativity is completely forsaken and has no place within the more conservative construct of what the visual arts is to some, and that eliminates an entire, possibly entire genres, whole wings of art. So how do we arrive at a space that is tangible? How do we arrive at that sweet spot in the middle? I was looking at an article about the the red chip art movement versus the blue chip art movement. And blue chip art, basically, as far as my understanding of both and the differences, blue chip art still pays homage to the great masters, and you have an understanding of those works, those great Western works of art, and art in general, as far as contributing to the um, the advancement and the history and the rich tapestry of the past as it relates to the present when it comes to art. And the red chip art movement says that there's no need to embrace all those ideals. And if it is a reflection that is superficial in nature of our society, if it's a reflection of our society, then who do we have to blame? And that's another conversation for another day. My question is, that sweet spot, what does it look like? I think we have to create that sweet spot in the middle to where there is a degree of skill in producing art. There is a degree of rigor when producing the art. And there has to be an understanding of what makes it important, not just because it exists. There has to be a certain scrutiny to the arts. And unfortunately, that is completely gone with progressive thought. The idea of art is, well, art can be anything. Well, what would make me want to invest in something that can just be anything? Why would I want to enlist an artist for a project or incorporate an artist in my life if art can be anything? I can just make it myself. I can I can make it because it can be anything done by anybody. But you don't want to limit the expression. I think you do want to scrutinize the expression. And I think that that right there will be the conversation that saves the arts. I think having a conversation of putting the brakes on anything goes, putting the brakes on um, only art can be Michelangelo because we don't have any Michelangelos today. I think putting the brakes on and reassessing what art is, what art's mission is, and where we want art to go are the only real ways at making art valid again. Otherwise, as of right now, it's becoming a proper joke. I'd love to know what you think. This is your guy, The Brave Artist, asking you to share, like, or subscribe if you find the content useful or engaging, and let others know about this small but growing channel. Until the next time, take care.